Hi everyone, so today is April 1st and I feel prompted to record and post this today because this is going to be very significant for someone out there. Something I'm going to say that is something that I personally probably would not even pick up on as something that just clicks for you. It's going to resonate and it's going to answer a lot of questions. It's going to confirm something for you. Okay, it's going to validate something internally for you, and it's major. I'm getting a channeled song. It's Love You by Maxwell. I will link that below. And so the channeled message that I am receiving is going to come through mainly as me sharing some things about my life. And I've pulled 2 Archangel Michael cards. I felt that that was something that was being prompted to me that I'm going to look at when I feel prompted to. I don't know what they are, and I don't know, but it's important here somehow. And I'm also getting 2 weeks. So if you're watching this ahead of time, like past the 2-week mark of when I post this, then I'm seeing this as I saw 10 and I heard 10 days, so that must be significant here, but it's a 2-week window after you watch this video, or it starts a few days before, but then I see 10 again, so maybe I'm misinterpreting. It's like 10 days. I don't know, because that's almost 2 weeks, but anyway, but for someone watching, this is going on right now. A huge drastic change in your life. They showed me an elk in probably like 3 inches of mud or 4 inches of mud near the elk, and you're trekking through it. And you would think the elk's fine. It's a little bit of mud, you know, it's natural environment. It'll be fine. But consistently over time, that can wear at someone's body. It gets very exhausting. And so they compared it to being in the military or like a boot camp. And at the end of some sort of workout, and you're crying and you're sweating and you're aching and you're like, I can't do it. And they're like, go, you better go. And that's kind of the feeling that I'm getting here, where this is happening internally or externally somehow, where it's like, I can't go any longer, but then spirit is pushing you, or it's like spirit working through you, and internally you're like, I can go, I can keep going. And then you make it out, you clear the mud, and you're like, I feel better. And that's what I'm seeing here, is this weight lifted off of you. And so let's talk about my story and see how that relates. I feel like I'm about to sneeze. Okay, so I remember a lot about my childhood, and I remember tasting my first plum. I remember trying to learn to walk. I remember when my awareness started changing and I was starting to notice things differently, and I could see, it was when I started eating strawberries in the garden. I was eating strawberries in the garden. They're green strawberries. I just kept eating and eating. And then I realized the world seemed so different. It like opened up. It was a beautiful day. I was starting to feel something. I was having an allergic reaction because I'm eating unripened strawberries. But it was like, well, it wasn't really an allergic reaction. It was just like some sort of irritation. I was starting to get like irritated, but I didn't really understand that feeling. And I was just excited. Like I could feel the texture. Like I understood the texture of the strawberry. There was a dog. I saw a dog underneath the fence, and it was a white dog. And it was like I was beginning to understand. I was beginning to understand the world. And I even remember the depth perception as a baby where it's like one-dimensional. Like it looks very different. Like your brain's still developing. So you're more of spirit. You're still with your spirit guides and just like actually physically in the spiritual world. Like you're more of that. And so I remember all this. And I remember this time that I was in my bouncy chair. So I was 6 months and under probably, because I don't believe I was able to walk at this time, or, you know, I was still learning to walk. And I was really sad that day, that evening. It was dinner time. My mom was cooking. I believe it was spaghetti. It was something dark. She was cooking something dark. And there were 2 pots. And I don't really think about that, but I remember looking at the food, and I just remember, like, I remember the details, but I don't ever really, like, think about it that much. But I was really, really sad because I wanted to feel loved. I wanted to know what that was like, to be loved. I remember my mom would always look at me with these blank eyes. There was no compassion behind her eyes, and I just wanted to know what that felt like. And my sister was very nice to me, but they would always reprimand her when she was too nice or she was giving me too much attention, because the way that they saw me was a very needy baby. I was crying all the time. I was frustrated all the time. And they never really liked me growing up. And even now, they don't seem to really like me because they don't really understand me. But when I would cry, like in this moment, and I'm talking about that evening, I was crying. And I just wanted to be held, and I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be looked at. And my dad and my sister were in the living room. My mom was in the kitchen. She picked me up for a little bit, but she wasn't looking at me. She was just holding me to try and get me to be quiet. And I could hear them back and forth, and her trying to pass me off to my dad. And he's like, no, like he doesn't want you, you know. And then she's like, I don't want her either. So they put me in the chair. And then she goes and watches TV, and they're getting upset, and they're trying to turn the TV up, and they're just mad. They're mad because they're trying to just live their life, right? And my sister tried to come towards me, and they reprimanded her. They're like, don't look at her, don't give her any attention. If you ignore her, then maybe she'll learn to stop crying. And that made me more upset. So eventually, when my mom was going to the kitchen, they got so tired of it. And I remember looking at the clock, and because they kept pointing it out. They said, it's been however long, and I could read energy. Babies read energy, and babies are learning the language very rapidly, but they can't communicate it back. And you know, I don't know if their vocal cords are still developing in order to actually make words, but that's kind of how I felt. Is like I understood way sooner than I could communicate it, right? And so and I'm just thinking, you know, because language itself is symbolic, right? And so it's a transfer of symbolism. Anyway, that's a side note, that's something else. But anyway, so I could infer that when they were talking about the time, they're like, it's been 5 minutes, it's been 10 minutes. It's like, she won't stop. It's been 30, I missed my show, you know, all of this. And so she finally picked me up, and she was carrying me around in the kitchen, and she was like pinching me and just like gripping me. And I just like freaked out. I freaked out because I was like, this is horrible. Like, I don't want to be here. Like, I don't want to be here. And I'm like, energetically, I just started like freaking out, and I'm like looking around energetically. And I heard like soothing songs, like angels. It felt like angels, like they're singing to me. They're giving me like lullabies and like just like trying to like comfort me. And as soon as I found them, it was like in the wall. Like, I don't know how to say like the wall, but they're not in the wall, but they're like right there. And I looked like, and they tried to hide. I could feel their energy shifting. And so they don't actually like leave or hide from you, but they try and just like adjust their energy so that the frequency isn't enough for you to like pick up on them and listen, right? And so they're trying to change their energy, and I was like changing it, trying to like chase after them, right? And so they were like, stop, don't do this. Like, you're not supposed to see us, right? And so I didn't want to stop because I was just really having a moment. And so what intervened was my soulmate's higher self. My soulmate's higher self came through and was soothing me. And as soon as I connected, I was simultaneously soothed internally, but externally I was still upset. But I connected to this energy. It's like this, like a portal. And I connected to it. And as soon as I did, it started showing me, this is all happening at once, but I'm going to say it like it happened one after the other. So I could see the people in the room, and it's like a range, a heart range, right? Of like where their love in this life as their being. It's like, it was like, how do I explain? It's like everyone's life's path and all the different, based off of everyone's free will, what that potential could look like for someone, how soon they could die, how soon they can reach a certain thing, what they could accomplish. It's like everyone has varying capabilities in their life, but I'm talking about just in the room, right? So it was like, I could see all that. And then I could see this caliber of love, where in this lifetime, what are they capable of perceiving as unconditional love, like true love, what they can give, what they can offer, right? How they can be in the world. And as soon as I saw the levels, it was like the levels they were currently at, the levels that they were, and how they could be. I'm getting flustered because I'm like looking at it, and it's starting to get a little overwhelming because I don't talk about this. And this is my first time talking about this, like officially, I feel, and like I'm gonna tell you like as much detail as I can remember right now. So, anyway, so, and I did talk about this at one point, but I'm telling you in like full everything, mostly everything. So it really upset me because they could only love me so much. Like, they could never really see me for me. And that was heartbreaking to see, because then you could see their spirit, you can feel their spirit, and the wholeness of the spirit, and the connectedness of the spirit, and source of our spirits to divine, to God, of the creator. And so it was like a feeling of helplessness and frustration, and kind of this feeling that it was starting to sink in of, oh my gosh, like, I'm really doing this now. I'm really here. Like, it finally started to sink in for me that I'm going through life again. And I could feel the slowness of life, like the perception of life and how slow it would be, and how much, I started getting more upset because I'm thinking how much I have to relearn in order to become just a functioning adult. Like, that's so frustrating to me. Like, I'm gonna have to learn how to speak a language. I'm gonna have to learn how to, be dexterity. I'm gonna have to learn all of these things. And it's gonna take time, worldly time. It's gonna take worldly time. And not only that, but all of the things that would happen to me and potentially happen to me. It's like that range for me. And so I also saw like the range of understanding. And it's the same but different when it comes to love. And so I pulled myself. I was like following his energy and his higher self's energy, and I went up and I could see the world. It expanded and I could see it's like when you look at like those Verizon or whatever commercials and it has all the little signals, it's like kind of like that, kind of, but it's more felt than it would be seen, obviously, but anyway. But you could see everyone's, and then it started expanding. It was just the entirety of everything. And I found my soulmate. I was like, yeah, and like found exactly where he was in the world. And I went to him, and that's where I saw him. And I realized in that moment, again, of seeing him, and that he was like, he had other things going on in his mind as a baby. He had other things going on. And then I saw the people around him, and it was like, because I was sad, then that made me like yearn for him and yearn for like the angelic realm. And by doing that, it made me realize, by looking at him, that just as he was forgetting me, I was forgetting something. Why would I focus on this stuff? Why would I be sad? If I had remembered everything, I would feel at peace. I would feel comforted. I would feel confident. I would feel like how I felt before incarnating, of like, okay, let's do this. Let's get down to earth. Let's start this life again, I wouldn't feel these feelings. I would be at peace. And so that sent me into his tailspin even more. And what I believe to have occurred, because I saw this another time in my life, was an archangel intervened. And an archangel, these guardian angels are guides and people who've crossed over, for the most part, who are watching over us, they have their own life lessons to learn into different capacities, and they follow a higher guidance as well. These archangels are the voices of God, the deliverers, and so on and so forth. And so there's a direct obedience that occurs when archangels arrive. And so when this archangel came, then everyone was essentially silenced, and so was I. And basically I had to just carry on. And so that gave me a basis all my life of saying, well, my childhood was so harsh, and I was such a sensitive baby, that I cultivated this spiritual belief that I never shared with people in order to cope with reality. Like, reality was so harsh for me that I created a false reality in order to feel safe. And what's interesting about it is the reality is, because of the harshness of this world, it forced me into spirituality. It forced me into the spiritual world. It forced me to go up there and explore it and to see it and to experience it and to remember it and to hang on to it as much as I possibly could. It forced me into my purpose, right? And so I haven't said this, so this is a trigger warning. But I haven't said this in specifics, so I'm gonna light this candle because I feel like I should. You know, I experienced a lot of abuse when I was a baby, right? Physical abuse, emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, mental abuse, to varying degrees of severity and whatnot, and neglect, and also sexual abuse. And it was done by my mother. And I carried that with me for so long because just a bunch of different reasons, but I never told my dad. I never told anyone. What I believe happened is, so one of my friends at the time told me about something that they were going through, something they were experiencing. And I felt that I needed to tell them my experience because they needed to know from, it was just relevant. Okay, it was relevant. And I believe that was a preface to me telling my dad. Because when I told my friend, I didn't feel much of anything. It was like, oh, that wasn't really that hard. And I was more concerned about something else, like going on with them, that I didn't really care how I felt, you know, or I wasn't thinking how I felt, right? So that was that, right? So leading up to when I told my dad, you know, my dad, he was abusive as well, and it's not to negate his abuse over hers, because abuse is abuse. But I will say, because he was absent, he was mostly absent, and so he was kind of the enforcer when he was around. And it was very confusing and frustrating because he's a very perceptive, as an adult, right? I could see that he was such a perceptive person, a very psychic person, a very giving person, helpful. He's a pillar, good, like a light in the community. People really look for him for help. They admire him on his hard work, and just a really, really like thoughtful and kind person in the community. And granted, some of it's for selfish reasons, but I do feel sincerely that is who he is, right? And so it was so devastating when I would see him be this way, and I think, what about me? What about me? Like, perceive me, you know, fix me. I'm broken. Look at me, you know? And he wouldn't. And the way that I see it is because he was running away from things in his life. And so how can he perceive something happening to his own flesh and blood if he cannot do that with himself? If he cannot understand himself, if he's not willing to look at himself, if he's not willing to heal anything from his past and his life, how is he supposed to do that within his own family when the way that he deals with it is the way he dealt with it then, which is to run away from it? So if you don't think about it, you run away from it, you don't pay attention to it, then it doesn't exist. Therefore, it's not your problem. And so even growing up, with regards to me, you know, he never liked me. They would always try and like leave me behind, just talk junk about me and all of that. And so just all of that. So that was probably part of it too. But I feel like you can't really like someone if, I mean, there's more complications to it as to why it was over my sister more than me with the favoritism and all that. But anyway, and I never had the option to run. You know, I was essentially enslaved to this. And so anyway, when I told my dad, leading up to it, there was like a period of time, an extent, I don't know how long, it felt like a long time, where I would just be crying and crying and crying. And, you know, my friend's like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I'm just healing. I'm healing. That's what I'm doing. Like, I was just crying. And it wasn't about what happened to me. It was, I think, just kind of going back to sitting with spirit and truly understanding unconditional love, where people are only going to be able to love to a certain capacity in their life, and they're only going to be able to remember spirit to a certain capacity in their life. They can only do so much with whatever is going on in their soul's journey. And the reality is that's the reality, is you can only do as much as you can possibly do, and sometimes it's not 100%, and it's not supposed to be 100%, right? Like, everyone's on their own specific journey. What you have to do is love them anyway. You have to love them. You have to understand that you just have to understand that. And so I think that was really what it was, is like, you know, however much of the range of your abilities and your free will happens, and what people imparted onto you and your story, that is kind of, you know, adjusting that. It is what it is, you know. I have to just forgive, understand, and love. Like, understand, when you understand, then that the rest comes through, right? And also seeing that in you, right? Like, maybe there's something that I can never really fully grasp in this life, you know, that I will be blind to for whatever reason on my journey it's supposed to be. And so when the lead up to talking to him, it was later in some evening, and I felt spirit talking to me. Like, I could feel that it was time. And I don't know. I don't know the full extent of why, you know. I don't know what's going on in his life or whatever, how this unfolds necessarily. And even with me, I don't know how it necessarily unfolds, but I can tell you what happened after that. But I'm trying to think. There was something else I was gonna say. The thing is like, I never felt like I wanted to even actually tell him. Like, it never felt like I had to tell him, and it didn't feel impulsive, essentially, is kind of what I'm getting at. It never felt impulsive. Oh, this is what I was gonna say, is for a long time now, I have been praying. Like, every day I pray, You know, God, use me in the way that I am meant to be used. Like, purify me and give me the strength, or even if the ability to perceive that I have the strength, and so on and so forth. All of these prayers where essentially it's like, let me do what I'm here to do, right? Like, help me help myself follow in faith, true faith. And so this is like part of that commitment I felt, where it's like, well, listen, you know, and I've told you, I talked to my dad and I didn't want to talk to him and all that stuff. And so I felt that that was the time that I had to tell him. And so I did. I sent it through text message, and it was this feeling of like really understanding how little it matters. Like, it does not matter what he says. Like, there's nothing he could say that would change what happened. And there's nothing he could say that would make me feel better. Like, that closure, that surety, everything, it comes from me, right? And so he's going to be him, and he's going to respond however he wants to respond. It is what it is. It matters with me and how I deal with it. And when I told him what I did not expect are a couple things. The first thing I did not expect is I started feeling like I lied. It was not this explosion of relief and I felt so great and all this. It was like, I felt like a liar. I kept thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. My nose is running, so excuse me. I was very surprised about that, because I spent so much of my life denying it, questioning, is that really what it was? Is that the proper terminology? Am I making it up? I don't know. Like, I knew I wasn't making it up, but you know, all my life they would tell me I would make things up, or they would just, you know, and not about any of this like spiritual stuff. I never talked about this kind of stuff. It was just in general. Like, they would always just call me a liar, like shut me out, try and just get me to be quiet. And so all of that came back up again, and it was like really coming to terms with how much of that I carried into my adulthood, of not really being sure about myself. And because I was hiding that part of it, you know, even if I talked briefly to other people, it was like, I don't know, something just had to happen there. I just had to tell him. I had to just be honest, because I was carrying her secret. I was carrying her secret this whole time, when it wasn't my burden to carry. That wasn't my secret to hold on to. And I shouldn't have any secrets, honestly. But yeah, so that was the first thing. And then I felt like I needed to just shower, like literally have a ceremonial shower. And this is something I've never done, and so that was kind of surprising that I even felt this way. But it was like a death of me, like a death of the old me. And I was literally showering and like saying, just like, I'm being baptized. Like, I was literally just washing away my past and anything that wasn't mine, just wash it all away. And it was that next day that things had changed for me. It was as if I finally started living in the present, and I never knew I was dredging the past with me this whole time. It was this new sense of awareness where even the air felt different on my skin, and I could see things differently. It was like clear and present. And I never known what that felt like, because since I was born, it had been terrible. It had been trauma inducing. And so it was in that I not only was present, but I felt understood. Like I felt understood. That like I understood myself. And I wasn't ashamed of myself. It's like all these things that, you know, if you would have asked me then, are you ashamed? I'd be like, no. But there was something still that needed to be let go. And that was it. And it had nothing to do, with my dad or even my experience or my mom. Like, I really feel like it was, what it really came down to is me following God's word, God's guidance, everything I pray for, where this is what you were instructed to do. Are you going to do it? And then afterwards, it started to unfold and make sense. And again, I feel it's a continuation of making sense for me, of that sense of freedom I got that I didn't know I didn't have, that heaviness that I didn't realize I was carrying, that blurriness, that clarity coming through that I didn't realize I needed, and the confidence and the surety of who I am and where I'm at. And how it doesn't matter what anyone thinks about you, what anyone says about you, how they respond, and even what they do. Like, literally, just, it doesn't matter. And I will say, the way he responded was basically, he said specifically, we did not abuse you. So he spoke for her and for himself. Like, we didn't abuse you. It was very dismissive. Same, like, what would you actually expect? An apology? Come on now. So he was basically like, we did everything we could. We sacrificed our lives for you, and we yada yada yada. So that was that. So I went on a walk, okay, on the beach that day, the next day, right after I told him. And I was walking and just kind of feeling refreshed, and then it was like this side sweep coming in, the devil coming in himself, and was basically like, what if what my dad said had any merit? What if? And I was like, I rebuke it. I don't want that. Like, it does not matter. It does not matter. What matters is that I followed through with what I believe was told to me to do. Point blank. And I did not lie. I did not even stretch the truth one bit. I didn't, like, did I do what was called to me? I did, right? And so I pushed that away. And for a split second, I almost asked for a sign. And I said, don't do that. Do not test anything. Do not do that. And I feel like that was just a premonition that a sign was coming, because not 5 minutes later, I will post the picture, but it's a seashell. And I saw the seashell. And I'd never seen someone ride on a seashell before. I go to the beach all the time for over a decade now, not every day, but I've lived at the beach for over a decade, right? And I found the seashell, and it had sand covering most of the wording, and it was cupped full of water. And I brushed the water and the sand out, and I read it, and it says, if anyone keeps my word, he will never see death. And that was confirmation right then and there for me that, once again, did you follow your commitment? And it's like, step 1, make the commitment. Step 2, honor the commitment. Is that what you did? And yes, I did. And so that's it. So let's look at the cards. It says, write about your thoughts and feelings. And the prayer below says, thank you for helping me tap into my God-given creativity and wisdom so I clearly express myself and glean insight, blessings, and healing. And then we have, you're on the right path. And the prayer is, Archangel Michael, I call upon you now. Thank you for giving me loud and clear guidance that I easily understand. Thank you for motivating me and filling me with the courage and confidence to make healthful life changes. And I'm hearing you're closer than you think you are. You're closer than you think you are. These are the 2 cards if you want to look a little closer to it. I'll hide my face. And so that's the message for you today. And I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.